Thank you. Okay. Hello and welcome to the next session. Let's go back with my clicker. Yeah. Top 5 cognitive services for Microsoft 365. My name is Thomas Goelles. I'm an Office Development MVP working for a company called Solvion. And with me is Stephan. Stephan, short introduction of yourself.
Yeah, my name is Stephan. I'm an AI MVP working at the same company, actually same office location as Tommy.
Normally, not in this
Usually.
year so far. Usually, yeah, that's true. Okay, let's start. A big round of applause and a big thank you to all the sponsors that also make those online events possible. You already noticed that the guys from Belgium and the Netherlands created totally new setups for us to consume the great content and also for us to present. So with Discord and YouTube, and that of course needs a lot of working hours. So thanks to the guys in the background that did all that, and thanks to the sponsors that make all that possible. And if I'm informed correctly, a few lucky fews from our attendees today got a nice breakfast earlier, Stroopwafels, if I'm informed correct. So those kind of things are made possible from the sponsors. Another very important thing, the code of conduct. So you should have seen this already at least twice. I hope everyone refers to what we in German call Hausverstand, like common sense. Be respectful and keep that code of conduct in mind, especially if you interact in Discord. And a small reminder, because I make that mistake all the time, sarcasm and irony isn't really working in text. So keep that in mind as well. Before we start, a short introduction in terms of what else are employees, or in our case, now it's a Saturday morning or noon already, what are attendees doing during a conference call? So some of you might do sending email in between, texting, checking social media. Just to give you in context that we know that we are online now, so we need to do things a little bit different in terms of presentation. That's why the setup is the way it is today, with both of us trying to look in the camera. It's not so easy. Already we're doing it for 6 months, but it takes some time to act like a TV presenter. But we know that people are a little bit distracted. That's normal. It's actually the same in our sessions in real life. We realize that also when we look into people or in the audiences during the session. So don't mind. We have no problem if you do a little bit of side work and just focus on the interesting parts. Don't feel guilty, because I always feel a little bit guilty when I don't pay attention for 100%. It's totally normal. So right into the topic. Why do we think that AI and cognitive services right at the moment, especially in Microsoft 365, make a lot of sense to use? First of all, some great accomplishments in the field are already, really old, and even older than Stephan, because there's your birthday or birth year also with 1992 present. So you might not know all the old thing, but if you look at it, 1994, a self-driving car. And I think this week, Tesla announced that their totally autonomous possibilities of car driving will be released later on. So it's already there in the basics. But what changed so dramatically over the last couple of years is, first of all, the compute power. Think of now, I think it's 60 Azure regions at the moment, and it's not only Azure. We need to look outside of our Microsoft bubble as well. There are other big data centers available also. If you think of just the compute power that is available at your fingertips, so you can register an Azure account or another account from another vendor within minutes and deploy a very powerful virtual machine that wouldn't be possible a couple of years back. So that's one thing. Really amazing compute power, even at our fingertips. Another big thing is that we have data like never before. The amounts of data we as a society globally produce every day, it's astonishing, and it's getting more and more and more with every year. Those two things are our main driver. So we have more data available than ever before, and we have more compute power available for more human beings around the globe. Those two facts are the basis. this slide is a little bit influenced or we leveraged something from Microsoft. So that's why there's also powerful algorithms. I did computer science a couple of years ago already. Most of the algorithms are, or what we learned in the beginning of the 2000s were like already 20 years old. So I'm not really sure if all advantages we see are the algorithms. I believe more that the compute power and the availability of the data and the compute power at the edge or at your machine is really that what changed. The Azure AI platform itself has way more features and way more areas that we are focusing in this talk today. We will focus on the bot framework and cognitive services. The cognitive services is our tagline, our headline, because this is what makes everything intelligent for us. The bot framework is the way we consume that most of the time. It's not always the case, but most of the time we try to integrate some intelligent services through a bot via the bot framework. But as you see on the screen, AI infrastructure, AI tools, there is a lot more you can do with it. The difference for us, or like the difference what we make, or it's an easy difference for us basically, is that we say, okay, the AI infrastructure and the custom services are more for data scientists. So that you bring your own data, you bring your own algorithms, and you try your own models. Within AI, everything basically comes down to what's called as a model. And the model is basically the description of how an algorithm interacts with data and generates the intelligence. It's my own words. It's not a definition from someone else, so might be not 100% correct, but that's how I see it. And that's how I feel to be a little bit getting around all those things. The cognitive services now are a little bit special because they are ready to use services already. So, for example, you just provide a couple of images, tag them and say, okay, on these 5 images, I see something red, and on these 5 images, I see something blue. And the engine then, okay, analyzes the images and learns how to tag them, how you did it. And that's way, way, way more easy than you need to come up with your own, I don't know, Hadoop cluster or whatever you need to do that. So it's more ready-made services that we use in our projects because we save a lot of time and energy if we use and leverage what's already there. To give you an idea what cognitive services are or what type of cognitive services are always available, there is a great table of elements basically, or table of Azure Cognitive Services created by Matt Wade and Stephan together. Pretty sure most of you are familiar with the table of Office 365. The same technique and the same guy did that basically. And the categories are, as you see on the screen right now, search, vision, language, and speech. And we will have 5 demos today from different areas within those categories. And just to give you an idea, search, I think, is very clear. It's everything with Bing and auto-suggestion. Vision, that's like face detection, where you can guess a person's age or you can detect the person. There was a big demo case part of the Ignite a couple of weeks ago where they showcased a COVID-19 tracking system, a camera in front of company lobby, I think it was, where the system tried to detect people and automated said on a log file, okay, Tommy was today in the office, Stephan was on Wednesday in the office. So that in case we need to have this track and trace data, it's available again very easily. Content moderator is also interesting. That's already baked in, for example, in OneDrive. So inappropriate images, don't want to go into details, but you can think of images that no one wants to see out there in the open. The system already looks at your images and tags them for content that is not really supposed to be there. Language, everything in terms of translation and language understanding. And then what we as big football fans call the Champions League, everything in terms of text to speech and speech to text. We will see some limits there because when Stephan and I talk in our way of German, that probably nobody north from Munich will understand because we are from Austria. That's a little bit tough to do with all our dialects, but it's getting better. And it starts for me, for example, the system understands me better when I talk English than when I talk German. It's a little bit strange, but yeah, that's it at the moment. For now, I want to make a short break in the presentation, and I want to ask you two things. And let me share something different on my screen. So if you pop over to that URL in the top to menti.com and use the code that you see here, you can give us some information about, okay, what AI service, or did you already use an AI service? So that would give us some impression if our audience already is using AI services, yes or no, and if no, but you might want to use them. So just hand over in your browser to menti.com, type in those 7 digits and provide an answer. We wait for a couple of seconds in case there is some latency with the stream. That's always interesting to see. Yep. So we have 1 answer, so I know that it's working. 2, perfect. Okay, so the answers are coming in. That's nice. That's also in a side note what we're trying to do in terms of making interaction possible in our sessions. So there might be a case in the future where we have questions as well. All right. I think that gives us a rough idea where we are. So like half in terms of yes and no. And when I count the no but want to also as a yes. That's perfect. So let's go deep into our examples. And I head back to PowerPoint. I need to find the correct slide. And Stephan, you take us away with the Q&A Maker.
Yeah, so Q&A Maker basically is one of the most lightweightest cognitive services from all of them. So Q&A Maker is basically a cloud-based API, as all of the other cognitive services are as well. And with Q&A Maker, you can actually create knowledge bases of some sort. So it's a service which provides, I always like to call it knowledge base as a service. So with Q&A Maker, you can create knowledge bases. And in those knowledge bases, you can aggregate data of different kinds in a very structured way, meaning questions and answers. So you can build up your what you did in the past with SharePoint wikis, for example, where you had questions and answers and you had information in there. You can do that with the Q&A Maker as well. But the Q&A Maker is mainly focusing on delivering a conversational scenario. So it's always about having questions and answers in there. And the target might always be, for instance, a chatbot. Doesn't have to be, because you can use Q&A Maker in other scenarios as well. For instance, you can have it as a data source for SharePoint framework web parts, which you can then use to display certain information within SharePoint or Teams applications. But the main principle is always the same. It's about questions, it's about answers, and they shall be consumed by some kind of service. May that be a bot or may that be any other kind of service. The data and the runtime which are delivered and used by the Q&A Maker service are always hosted in your Azure subscription. So you're basically the owner of the data and you're the only one responsible for that data. And the Q&A Maker service per se also is hosted within your Azure compliance boundaries, and therefore your rules are applied to those services as well. The nice thing about Q&A Maker, especially in terms of using it from the chatbot angle, is that it provides certain default data integrations like chit-chat. So whenever you build a bot, you don't have to come up with all the chit-chat questions, but you can basically do that or integrate them out of the box. Tommy, if you would advance the slide, we will have a look at how to actually get started with Q&A Maker.
Before that, give me like 20 seconds, because I realize now we didn't apologize for our mess with the technology in head, because you see that our slides are like empty in the lower third. The idea was that Stephan and I are not located in the same room at the moment. We wanted to have a Teams call and make some cool OBS layover so that the thing is transparent and you see us both down in the bottom. We tried that a couple of times this week. It worked every time until like half an hour ago when Teams NDI stopped being present in my client, but it is still present in Stephan's client. So didn't turn out the way we wanted to be, but that's just for an explanation why in our slide deck there are a couple of areas that are big and wide. Apologies for that. We know that the space is there and we could use them, but we had something different in our mind. And a couple of minutes before we go live, it doesn't work again. But just to give you an idea why there is so much white space, and we will change that for the slides that will be available to you. So sorry, Stephan, apologies again, and please.
Yeah, Q&A maker. For those of you who answered with no but want to, in the question of menti.com from Tommy earlier. So this is basically one of the most easiest to consume and most easiest to set up cognitive services from all of them. So what you need to do basically in terms of setting up a new Q&A maker service is, if you already have an Azure subscription, you basically log into the Azure portal and create a new Q&A maker resource from there, or you go to qnamaker.ai, log in with the account who has permissions on the Azure subscription and create a new Q&A maker service Azure resource from there. And if you have that Azure resource, you will notice it basically consists of a couple of Azure services in the backend. You'll get the Azure Search instance along with your Q&A maker service. You'll get a new application app service along with your Q&A maker instance for the runtime. And if you want to have it, you also get a application insights resource for doing monitoring and stuff like that. So whenever you've created the Azure resources, the first step is basically done. And then you go over to the qnamaker.ai portal where all the magic happens. And there you create your knowledge bases. So you basically create a knowledge base. You'll pick the Azure resources you've created earlier, and then you pick the language of choice. And what you can do within the creation experience already, you can fill it with data. So whenever you have, for instance, a public-facing website running somewhere which has some FAQs out there, or if you have some files containing information in an FAQ format like PDFs or Words or whatever, you can already include them within the creation experience for creating a new knowledge base based on that data. So Q&A Maker is also able to extract data which is already there. You don't have to manually enter all the questions and answers by yourself. But if you have resources out there which already contain FAQ-like information, you can have the Q&A Maker service extract those kind of data assets for you. You don't have to do it all the jobs manually on your own. After you've created it and after you have actually entered your data within the knowledge base, the most important step needs to be done. It needs to be trained and tested, and based on the testing results, your knowledge base and the service shall be refined. So whenever you're dealing with certain cognitive services, this is the most crucial part within the whole service lifecycle. If you don't train and test your models or your services, you don't know if they will actually be helpful for your later use case. So if you just imagine you create a knowledge base and you insert some data, and you always just think about how you would ask certain questions and don't think about how other people might ask certain questions, you don't actually get the results you want to. Focusing on what you're thinking would be good for that service. But in the cognitive services space, you should always think a little bit broader or outside the box. Think about how others might consume certain services, how others might ask certain questions, how others might see certain things, because that's basically what you need to keep in mind in order to build a successful service. And after you've tested it and refined it and you think about the service being good as it is, you can go ahead and publish it. And by publishing it the first time, you'll get a new API endpoint available for you. And from that point on, you can use Q&A Maker in any kind of service. You can have it within a chatbot. You can have it in any other kind of service as well. And I guess we have a little demo on the chatbot solution, which we would like to show you or demonstrate how it may look like. We've built a bot together with Hans Brender about OneDrive. And this bot basically is consisting of a large Q&A Maker knowledge base where Hans actually inserted all the information and knowledge he has about OneDrive. So Hans built basically a knowledge base with a couple of hundred questions and answers already solely about OneDrive. And we took that knowledge base and made a chatbot from that knowledge base out. So we actually have a chatbot running in Teams, which will soon be available to download within the Teams App Store. And this chatbot basically is nothing more than taking your question you have and asking the Q&A Maker knowledge base about that certain question. And if the answer will be retrieved, we'll send it back to you in the Teams chat. And that's basically how it looks like. You can have different kind of questions in there. We have follow-up prompts, which is a pre-built feature from the Q&A Maker service. So if you have some question about, tell me the storage of OneDrive for business, then you have follow-up prompts, for instance, about storage questions, which you might ask or which you might be interested in.
For those interested, the images are actually coming from Hans' blog, so they are available to everyone out there. We had some discussions in the last couple of months with customers that wanted to create something similar, but with knowledge that is more internally, more secure, more privacy related. We still have some problems with making those images available through SharePoint based on how security is implemented in bots. So if you see something like that, always keep in mind, if you think of a knowledge base, what is the content? And especially for Teams, I guess that most of our listeners or our attendees are more focused on the insight within their company. Then you need to be very aware, okay, how do you set up the knowledge base, and don't make the mistake to make that available also for anonymous users, so that you don't open up your knowledge basically to the outside world if you don't want that. Okay.
Next slide.
The next slide is the same one. Okay. Here we are. Translation. If you think of translation, and I know that there was a build demo a couple of years ago where the presenter from Microsoft used the translator application on his iPhone or Android phone back then, talked English from the stage, and a random person, we still don't know if it was really random or if he or she was also a Microsoft employee, but someone stand up and said, okay, I'm from China, I don't understand really good English, so let's try out the application. And he basically talked into the translator in English, and the person was able to see in a simplified Chinese manner what was going on in the talk. We could actually do the same also in PowerPoint. So it is possible right at the moment already that we could start with a translator link, and you could, for example, choose Dutch or French or even English or German as an output, and it would take what we say and give it down there as translations. Don't think that all this, because I'm pretty sure you all saw a couple of years already that for every big Microsoft conference, there was this translation or this speech prompt down there. A couple of years ago, they really, really learned all those words word by word. So that was their helpline also. It's changed in the last couple of years, I think 2 or 3, where they really are using their text-to-speech technology also in that regards. You can make use of that as well. It's behind Bing and Edge and all the Office applications where you can use translation. And it's a simple API call if you use the service, so you can integrate that in your applications as well. And of course, there are a couple of spots inside the Office world or Microsoft 365 world where it's also built in the system. One example would be the translations in Teams. So that's a fake dialogue between me and my wife in German, and it translates now back to English. That really depends on your setup. Stephan and I work on many projects that are all in English and not in our native language. And as you can imagine, having projects across Europe, there are multiple people with different backgrounds, and it's really helpful if you are not 100% sure and it's a project context. It might be helpful to take the English sentence and translate it back to your own language to get a better understanding. We don't see a world where everyone writes in his own language and the system translates itself. That's not what we see in the next, not at least in the next near future, but already this little help us in a daily basis to get a better understanding what others want to communicate to us. Another place would be Microsoft Word, where you have this translate button in the ribbon. I tried to write down a normal German sentence, something I would say in a normal way. And I ended with a special greeting, Grüß euch. That's a more dialect way to say hello. And you see the bottom right, it doesn't really know how to translate those words. So it takes it character by character and puts it out, because that's in no dictionary whatsoever. And that's the case with that. And that's also what we try out to make, okay, where are the limits, where are the boundaries of the translation at the moment. We all know that docsmicrosoft.com is powered by the same Bing translator. And we know if you're going deep into technical documents that it makes sense to read them in English and not in the translated way. Of course, most of the time, because all the details and all the special phrases that make much more sense. So, for example, in OneDrive, there's a feature that's called Fort Knox that makes perfect sense in English. There are some translations out there where you don't have a clue what they actually want to say, because that's the machine. The machine isn't aware that, okay, if an English word is taken out of context by its original meaning and made in a different context in our technical world, for example, then of course it's hard for the machine to know that immediately. Another great use case is image detection. Image detection and OCR. OCR stands for optical character recognition. That's basically a picture where there's some text on the picture, and the machine scans the picture and takes the text out of it. So you see here a receipt from Contoso. So that's one of the demo companies from Microsoft, and you see all the text on the receipt. And on the right side, you see what OCR was able to grab out of the picture. And the form recognizer is one of Azure services that is available now, where you can basically try the system to understand, in that case, receipts. That's very interesting in a business case, and there are solutions out there for already a couple of years specialized on that. That's all the invoicing and receipt digitalization projects. So you're taking paper in, scan it through, digitalize it, and work with the data inside of your processes. That's also coming now as a service out of Azure. That's really great. We used to work with a company, with a partner from ours, like for the last, 8 to 5 years, around that time frame, and implemented solutions where this technique was possible already on the client side, but not as easy and not as with this training curve now that we have available within the cloud, where you just take the picture, ask the cloud, and then you go take your data and start your process. You can again train the system so it detects especially your invoices, your receipt, because everything is a little bit different in terms of vendors that you used to work with, and they always have the same layout. So that makes really sense. And of course, we are from the DACH region, so everything around security and GDPR is highly of interest over here and very important. We do not throw away the paper. We keep the paper, but we work with the data in a digital way, and the paper basically gets in and is archived immediately. That's what changed over here. We work with the digital data and keep the paper, but the paper went away at first already. Other applications in image detection area would be Face API. There's a great demo out there on the Azure website where you can try to upload faces, and then it detects your age and your gender and all the things. And custom vision is basically the service where you train the system with your own images. You provide categories and tags, and the system learns how to interpret then the images you provide. An example of that and how to use that is a small flow that we built. And I'm totally honest, there's a video. I'm not doing the demo live because with all the problems nowadays going online, it's easier that way. But we created the flow, and that's a picture out from my terrace. I'm running the flow right now. The idea is that you can do that also with your mobile phone, because there's a flow app on your phone as well. Taking the picture, uploading it to the flow system. You see that the flow now is running and it's succeeded. What is going to happen? Switching over to Teams, you see that the flow bot realized, okay, I took a picture, and uploads the picture to Teams, so we can see it there. And we have a description. Description says now a bench in front of a building. You see that the picture is also available inside of SharePoint because we upload it to SharePoint and add the metadata down there, a bench in front of a building. It's not really a bench. It's probably the most Dutch thing I have at my home, because it's called a Dutch bar. It's basically something you can put on your terrace to have a nice bar there. But it detected something in the image. And the next thing we tried is, I have here a bike for Swifting, and it's in front of our bookshelf here. And it really detected the bicycle in front of the bookshelf. What is really interesting for me, as a little bit of a nerd in the area, it's really tough for a machine to realize those layers. So what is in front, what is in back. So that is really a cool thing that this is also possible right now. How are the things built in the background? Just to have a look into the flow. It's a manual flow, as I told you. We will go now through all the steps here, starting with some variables that we need to define. That's basically the path to where we should upload the images. Then we create a file. So taking the picture, create a file, and we use the file content and send over the file content to Azure, just with one action. That's the image description. So that's the service we use. And from there, it's just taking back the description and apply the description as a metadata to our SharePoint element, and then post the two messages to Teams. But the one action, head out to Azure. Here is my image. Give me please back the description. That's how easy you can integrate cognitive services at the moment. And you see one text or one demo was just a text block. Another one was a adaptive card. And then, of course, you can go a little bit deeper and create these adaptive cards with the nice image present also in the message. You see here the two different types. That's it. I don't know, 5 to 6 actions inside of flow. You need to configure once the connection to your Azure service to give the key. It's one field, one thing you need to copy over from Azure, and then you can make use of image description inside of your Microsoft 365 environment already. Stephan, text analytics.
Yeah, also one of the most commonly used cognitive services in the modern workplace is text analytics, because with text analytics you can do basic NLP scenarios. So what you can do with it is, first of all, detect the language of a given text. So you can detect if it's either Chinese or if it's Japanese or whatever. Then you can do sentiment analysis with it. So you have a kind of text abstract, and you want to get the sentiment out of it, if it's either positive or negative written. And what you can do with it as well is extract key phrases out of a text, which is also one of the things which might be helpful in certain scenarios. So text analytics is basically one of the service similar to Q&A Maker, which is pretty lightweight. It's just an API. You can integrate it in different kinds of services. May that be a chatbot, may that be a flow running somewhere, may that be a logic app, or may that be an Azure function. And you can have multiple use cases included within your text analytics resource. And one of the things we found would be really helpful in terms of integrating text analytics into Microsoft 365 is to monitor, for instance, your mails. So Tommy, if you would advance the slide, we have a little demo recorded in advance, which is about monitoring a mailbox, for instance, a customer support mailbox. So just imagine you have one mailbox for your customer support, and your customers are basically writing emails to that mailbox. May that be feedback about something is really good, or may that be some feedback that something is not working, as in that case. So the email should be analyzed somehow, and we want to extract the key phrases and the sentiment score. And again, here we're using logic apps, but it's the same principle as with Power Automate. You have one trigger when a new email arrives. Then you hand over the body of that email to the Text Analytics API to detect the sentiment, first of all. So you basically get a score between 0 and 1. 0 is rather negative, 1 is pretty positive. And after that, you basically do the same thing with the body again to extract the key phrases of that certain text. So you again hit the API, the Text Analytics API, and get the key phrases out of the email body. And I don't know if the video has now been stuck, Tommy, or if it's me.
Sorry, I answer questions in the chat next to me. I think it's a split thing, or
you're not allowed to click somewhere else.
Yeah, I know.
So again, email is sent to the mailbox, and then the logic app or the flow has been triggered. We'll get the sentiment score. It's just an API call. You can do it with code as well. And after that, we get the key phrases. So we send the email body to the service, get something back, do that twice, store that in different variables. And after that, we can basically do the same thing as Tommy showed earlier within Teams. We can create a new Teams message or Teams post. In our case, it's an adaptive card where we actually include the output of the Text Analytics API calls and basically send out a new Teams channel message automatically when something, for instance, is not working as expected. So if you just imagine if the customer reports something is not working or wants to complain about something and the sentiment score is pretty bad, you can actually create such a flow or such a logic app to inform your customer support people or employees that something is not working as expected and they should do something or react about that complaint, for instance. So again, just an API you can use in different kind of scenarios. Pretty easy to set up. You just have to create the Azure resources in the backend. You'll get a subscription key, and from there on, you're pretty much available to use the service. Last cognitive service is not only one, but one cognitive service we want to highlight in there. But the last use case or example is about conversational AI. So as Tommy mentioned in one of the first slides, we're focusing on the cognitive services part, but also on the bot framework part, because the bot framework actually is a platform where you can aggregate different kinds of cognitive services. So you can aggregate Q&A maker along with language understanding, along with the face API, along with speech to text and text to speech, all in one service, which may that be a chatbot, for instance. What is a chatbot actually? A chatbot actually is the thing, is a computer program. And I guess, Tommy, we have that on the next slide as well. Chatbot is a computer program, nothing more than a web API or web application, which is designed to have a conversation with a human being. And it should always solve the user's needs in the quickest and easiest way possible. And in order to do that, you need to have or integrate certain intelligent services within your chatbot use case, because otherwise it would just be a web application, wouldn't be intelligent at all. And within the conversation, you have different mechanisms, which we have outlined on the next slide. For instance, working just with text, which would one of the options, which we wouldn't recommend, but we would recommend to work with attachments and images. And there you see, if you build a bot, you need to make use of different kinds of cognitive services. So, for instance, what Tommy said earlier with the form recognizers and the receipt, you could have a chatbot up and running which actually gets receipts sent from users and analyzes them by using the form recognizer service, and then telling the user something about that receipt, for instance. So the chatbot would actually be the human interface, or the interface between the human and the cognitive service. And a chatbot actually should behave in a conversational way with conversational mechanisms, accepting not only text but also images, maybe videos, audio, and the same is true for the output. So the chatbot should not only send text, but it should send images. It should be able to send videos, for instance, if the use case is appropriate, and so on and so forth. And all of those kind of attachments could be combined with adaptive cards, which we saw earlier in Tommy's flow or in my Logic app. But the one service when building a chatbot or a conversational AI service, which you should always use, is what's called LUIS. So the language understanding service, which is one of the cognitive services. And LUIS basically offers you language understanding as a service. So with LUIS, you actually build your own language model. So what you do, like in our case, in that example, we have a pretty simple sentence called book a hotel in Graz, which is our hometown. And if you've built the appropriate language model, the LUIS service will be able to detect your intent. And the intent in that case would be book a hotel with the confidence score of 92%. And what it also will be able to do, if you trained the service correctly, is to extract certain entities. Like in our case, the location name is Graz. So LUIS will be able to not only detect the intent, but also extract certain entities. So you don't have to ask back if a user sends the phrase book a hotel in Graz. You don't have to ask back for which location do you want to book a hotel in. This is automatically done by LUIS. So this is one of the intelligent service in the language part, or in the language side of things, which you can actually use to build conversational AI platforms or services. And for building or creating a LUIS service, the steps are pretty much the same as with Q&A Maker. So you create the LUIS Azure resources. Within there, you create the intents, you create the entities. Then you need to add at least 5 utterances per intent. So the service will be able to learn from that 5 utterances. And then you need to tag the entities. Some of those are pre-built. So like in that case, Seattle wouldn't need to be tagged manually, because it's a well-known location name, and this will be automatically extracted by LUIS. But if you, for instance, have certain entities which are only valid in your business case or in your company, like abbreviations or stuff like that, you need to train the service or tell the service that these are the entities it should look for. And after that, after you've created the intents and added the entities, you train the service, you test it thoroughly, and if you think it's good to go, you just publish it. Same thing happens. API endpoint becomes available, and you can use it within your bot or any other kind of application you want to use it in. And I guess last slide, last demo for today, just to give you an idea how that may look like in a chatbot use case where you integrate Q&A Maker and LUIS. LUIS is basically then responsible for routing or detecting the intent. If it's something which should go to Q&A Maker, Louis will tell your bot, hey, this is a question which should be served by Q&A Maker. If it's not, it will detect the intent, and from there on, your business logic within your chatbot should kick in and handle the specific intent within a dialogue or a prompt or whatever. So basically, you can create conversational services, conversational platforms where you integrate multiple cognitive services of multiple categories like speech, language, vision, even search, if you want to, within one single human interface or interface to your human users, which may then be a chatbot used on desktop PCs, used on mobile phones, used on smart devices, wherever it makes sense. Good, and with
Perfect.
that, I guess we're pretty much
think we're
done
yes.
with our slides.
Yep. I need to fix the latest slide because, as I told you, we had some technical problems in the beginning. Just let me make that the big thank you. And merci and dankjewel. That was already there.
Very good pronunciation. You can move to Belgium if you want.
Not to the French-speaking part. My merci was so bad.
No, merci was perfect. Yeah,
I know. I think I know one tough word, la fenêtre, because I had French for a couple of months at least. I have a look at the Discord in terms of questions, and I know you want us to close on time. We had a question about privacy in terms of the Azure services. Just think of where you choose your regions in terms of Azure. So if you use Azure regions that are in the US, be careful with that, but you can use also EU data centers, or in 1.5 years also Austria East. That's very special for us in this week. But think of the data location. And as Api, thank you for answering the questions in the chat. You could also, for certain models, download the models on your machine. That means that you train the system in the cloud, but take the model on what's called the edge or your own environment and use the data in the model then on your local environment. So nothing goes out. So you train the system in the outside, but you apply the AI in the inside. That is also very interesting for more secure or more privacy related stuff. Let me have a look. Yeah, optical character recognition. I think I answered the question in the Discord channel already. Doesn't work for 100%, and I agree with Api. There are cases where humans need to interact with the forms and mark them as wrong or right, so that the system works perfect. And we achieve already something when we narrow down the human interaction needed. And Stephan, we had one input from Matthias from Xylos, book a hotel. We don't need that for now at the moment. That's very good feedback. Thank you for that. So you need to phrase that
that's why I used it
in the future.
That's why.
Okay, so it was on purpose. Okay,
it's not surreal
a
case.
Feature. Yeah.
It's a surreal case.
Yeah.
All right. We have one last question. Let me check that. And for all others that are already waiting for lunch or their biological needs in terms of a break, thank you again. But I want to answer the last question. You're already using Louis and example, if you search for pension holiday. Stephan, I think if you see the question, that's more
I can't see it, but
okay.
If you'll ask it, I'll try to answer it.
Okay, we are already using Louis, and this is working for basis functionalities. Now our client wants to automatically link terms to certain topics, quote unquote topics. For example, if you search for pension or holiday, you are forwarded to the HR page. So we want to automatically build a word cloud or related terms of a topic. So for me, that sounds like a concierge model, like Louis model, and then behind the second Louis model, and the first one just directs to one, or?
Yeah, basically what you need to do, the functionality which you're seeking might be dispatch. So with dispatch, you can create a master Lewis model, and beneath that you can create multiple child Lewis models. So the master gets the inquiry and then decides where to route or dispatch the question to. And if I got it correct, if you want to be able to decide where to route it based on different synonyms, if I get it correct, right? So
topics
pension and stuff like that. You can create phrase lists within Lewis to actually aggregate certain topics together. So it's nothing more than a list of phrases which you'll group together and which will then be applied to your model later on.
But feel free to reach us at Twitter or LinkedIn or wherever you find us to follow up.
The Discord channel will stay open. If you've got any questions afterwards, you can still ask them there also if you want. And I'm sure Tommy or Stephan will still be there to answer them. And if not, like Tommy said, reach out to them through Twitter. All right.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you very much for speaking at our event. I hope you found it interesting after your technical problem.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, and looking forward to go to Belgium. I don't know, next year or the year after. I don't mind. I just want to go back sometime.
Yeah, you're definitely welcome next year. Yeah, no worries. All right. Thanks very much. The next session will begin in 8 minutes, and that will be
The Omita framework is an enterprise-ready software platform that makes it possible to set up an easy integration between your existing back-office applications and push all the relevant information into digital workplaces. Omita has developed various kinds of solutions which can be easily deployed and linked to your back-office applications. Omita has solutions for contract management, HR to speed up onboarding and offboarding processes, sales dashboards, shop floor portals, and many more. If you want more information, visit our website.